Hi everybody, Mature Simmer here. So welcome back to the Mega VIP series. For those who might be new to this, this is an experimental series. It's experimental in the way that I'm using a main mod that's driving what I do on this farm, the VIP Order Manager. And I've made mods to it to make it workable for a large map such as this Nebraska map that I'm using here, Green Valley. So doing a lot of automation on the farm. So you can see I've got a tractor over there mowing, and I've got another tractor here windrowing. And shortly, I'm thinking I'm going to try to put another tractor on here, collecting. That's going to be a little more challenging with all this stuff moving around. This isn't the biggest grass field, but at this point, I'm just trying to get ahead of things. Right now, my processing has stopped for creating TMR for my cattle. The VIP orders that are driving our first level here are barley and canola. Those are in the field. I've got one crop, I think my barley crop, on the field right to the south through this group of trees that's going to be ready for harvest tomorrow. So I figured today I'd use some time to go ahead and get some grass and just keep the cycle going and make some progress. And I had done some of this manually a little bit, or just watched one of the pieces of equipment go around and figured I'd try to automate this a little bit more. You can see I'm certainly leaving large areas that aren't really being utilized as well as they could be, but I don't know that if I'm just efficiently working the field that I need anything too crazy. So I think I've got 3 passes going around for headlands. Now the mower moves at 14, this moves at 9, but this has a broader reach, so I'm just thinking that will work fine. The challenge is really going to become when it starts doing the center of the field, because I think I'm going to have to bounce around. I may have to stop the implements and so forth. So I don't want to get ahead of myself too much. I think I'm going to have plenty of time today to get this done, and as long as I can do that, and even if I can't within the time that's allotted to me, that'll be okay, because I can always pick up the grass later. I don't have an immediate need. The cow barns both have over 200,000 liters of TMR still feeding the cows. We're getting a good start on milk and so forth. And part of what the VIP series does that I use in most of my single players, or all of the active single players that I'm showing on the channel right now, is it just kind of gives me that, quest area and so forth. Now I'm using the same track, the same courseplay track for all of these. Now this is going to be interesting. I think they're going to be clear of each other, maybe. And I'll start to see, because that mower should pull ahead because it's going to be faster, so I think we're going to be okay. And at this point, he's probably even going to go faster because he's now going to the end to move around, but that means by the time I get down, I may have an issue. So I'm leaving a little bit of grass. You can see the mower's not quite that wide, and so I've got some tufts that are not being mowed. But once again, this isn't about incredible efficiency right now from a quantity standpoint, as it is just kind of blowing things out and keeping things moving with the grass, because I don't have an immediate need for grass. I will in the future, but grass grows pretty quickly. You can see in level 2 I need hay and grass, and we're getting a good amount off these fields, so I should be okay just working on those in level 2 as well. But this harvest is going to go into the silo over there, that large one beyond, which does some automated processing, turns some things into hay, turns it into silage, and then that silo also then uses the hay and silage to create TMR. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. Was a mod that I found. I didn't really realize it worked the way it did to create this great efficiency until I used it last time, and that was one of the previous episode is when I talked about that in detail. So if you're looking for that, certainly go take a peek, and I'd appreciate that as well. So just wanted to give you an update. A lot of what I do along with the automation is kind of show you what I'm doing, but not necessarily bring you along for the whole thing, because on a farm this size, things take a bit of time. So even though we've got things moving along pretty well, there's going to be probably several actual hours in some cases for work to get done, and that's a lot of video to watch. So I popped in, giving you what I need. You can see we're pretty efficiently moving along here. I'm going to keep this going, and I'll jump back in once I'm getting close to finishing up the grass. So I'll see you in a bit. Alright, I'm not sure how long this is going to work. Right now, somehow, they're avoiding each other. I don't know if that's going to continue over there. Thinking they're going to hit each other right now. Looks like they are. So I'm going to have to clean some things up. But I want to get this moving along as well, so but I'm going to start working on freeing those up there. Getting close to getting full. We've got these guys cleared a bit. You can see we got one here, one out there, one here. So things are moving along. We've got some challenges because of the feeding trough here in the center. I'm thinking we're probably going to run into it again with the mower. You know, every one of these things has a problem with that, but it still works pretty darn efficiently. But I just wanted to capture this while I have all three working, and then usually I stick around with this one because obviously I've got to do this, and there's not a way to automate it. Alright, it looks like the mower made it by there, so I think we'll be clear as long as they don't get in each other's way, which I think should be fine now because the track is going to keep the windrower at the other end of the field. So I think we're actually fully clear on those two. So yeah, I might be able to keep going. And as you can see, I mean, I did get started pretty early this morning. I was running around on the farm at 6 a.m., coming up on 9. So it is taking a bit of time. So I'm going to go ahead, and I figured out this process last time. The wheels are too big on this. I might be able to get rid of the duals and get this to work, but right now I'm sticking with the configuration that I have just to avoid any configuration changes, and then I can get in there, dump things, and then what we have going on is, again, I've got grass and I've got grass, and so that grass will go in and it's going to make hay and silage, and then what I need to do is potentially make a little bit more. You know what, I'm going to deactivate this because at this point I want to make some hay. But the reason that I looked at things the way I did, I need 360,000 in hay, and then I need 609,000 of grass. I already have 515,000 in TMR. So I don't necessarily need more silage and more TMR. So it's one of those, like when you don't work the farm for a bit, you kind of forget what your thoughts were at the time. So when I came in here, I had everything turned off except the hay, and I was kind of confused, like, well, my silage won't be created, but now I understand where my head was. It didn't take very much to get back there, so that was good. So what I need to do now in these cases is get back here. We got the windrower working around at that end. It's doing a good job there. Again, we might run into some issues with this, so I'm able to just restart where I left off. There it goes. You know, we might run into some issues of that going. We're getting really close on finishing up on the mowing, so that all works out. But at the pace I'm going, you know, things are going quite well on the farm for getting this moving along. Now you can see basically we had 500,000 of grass. Now if I need 360,000 of hay, you know, we can see how this is all operating, and then that will move along relatively quickly. You can see how it's changing at this point. You know, it goes down pretty quickly every few seconds. I think we're processing a few hundred. So the silo does a good job kind of keeping up with as fast as I can load it. For the most part, I think we've got 1 or 2 passes. You can kind of see the track appearing if you've ever used Courseplay, you know. And yeah, so this is just the last piece, and then it'll stop there, so I can get that tractor off the field and then just kind of let things continue. So as you can see, AI workers completed their task. So I'm going to go ahead, clean that up, but you have an idea of what I'm doing. And at this point, I will just go ahead and get this work done, and then come back and just let you know when I finished up, and we'll see where we're at and summarize things there, and then go into harvest the next day. We've got everything going. I'm looking at silage and hay, and I was going to say I have say, but so you can see we basically are on par to get 370,000-ish liters of hay, just slightly above the 360,000 we need. We need hay for silage later, so I'll let it go and I'll let it run empty. Otherwise, I have to kind of babysit it to stop it in time, which I could do. It's not something that's impossible, but not something that's necessary either. But the most impressive thing, I think, is, you know, given the fact that I can use the 3 tractors on the field together, is that, you know, we started at 6 a.m. and basically got done before 1. So that really bodes well for getting a good amount of things going. Now I had, I think, some hay in there already, so I don't know that I could say I got 360,000 liters off the field in one mowing harvest, but I certainly got over 300,000. So with regards to getting our 690,000 in grass, I'm pretty comfortable we're going to be able to do that, and I can just store that in here, you know, turn off the production basically once I have the hay done. Just turn all the production off, continue to load grass in when I have the opportunity to mow grass, because otherwise we're going to be dealing with multiple levels of harvest. Now the silos are pretty loud, as you can hear. There's a lot of blowers and things going, as in farm silos, as you'd expect. But tomorrow we're going to get to start using this equipment for the first time on the farm, so I'm pretty excited about it. I'll see you in a bit. Morning, everybody. So I'm back on the farm a couple months later, and reason for that is the field, the barley field that I thought was going to come due, it was just the edges, because if you recall, I think as I was planting, I got this field done and then ran the headland around, but then I think I hit midnight. So now our full field is ready. So I've gotten up bright and early today. I'm here in the pig enclosure that we don't really use, and I wanted to get going because I don't know how long this harvest is going to take. So as a reminder, this is what I'm targeting now. So I need to take this to the Hillside grain dryer. So the Hillside grain dryer is here. Looks like it's something I can get to. So it's over by field 26. I'm over there trying to figure out, it looks like, kind of coming down this road around and over. So yeah, this is not an easy delivery. I didn't expect things would be here. So I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to make that work, as well as figure out how to work the farm, or work the field. As always, because these jobs are huge, I'm going to go ahead and kind of just show pieces of them as I go along, just to give you a flavor of the work. But let me get going on that, and we'll figure it out as we go. So the first thing is I need to get my harvester out there and get it moving along, but I need the grain header as opposed to the corn header here. So get this out of the silo. It's not, whoops, there's a little bit of a visibility thing here. Went too far. There we go. So it's obviously a little noisy in the shed. I think I can get by here. I hope. So I'm going to need to obviously swap the truck out. Alright, let me head over here. We'll turn around in this area. Alright, so we are turned around. Probably could have just pulled out and headed to the street instead of doing what I had done. But just trying to figure out how I'm getting around here anyway. So yeah, it looks like we've got dual wheels on the front of the harvester, singles in the back. But dawn is dawning here in Green Valley, Nebraska here on this brisk fall morning. A bit cloudy, but doesn't look like it's showing us rain in the forecast, which is key to being certain that we are able to harvest, because otherwise we'd be having problems in the rain. So now this other field should hit next day, I think, again, because these harvests are going to be so large. I think I'm going to kind of cover this in this group, and then maybe start the next one off again. If we're not showing that much, it's one thing to be able to plan ahead, but I think we've got enough going on that I think we can make it a good number of minutes and fill things with harvest for certain. So I'm going to park over here, leave it across the street. It's the nice thing. So that's where we're delivering, where we see that shaft of light. Doesn't look that far away, but on a 4X map, looks can be deceiving. Alright, so with the draper, we want to fold that up. We are all set. So I'm back here getting the truck, because I obviously want to be able to start moving the barley. Alright, so this is kind of the, looks like the farm had this set up as the harvest shed a bit. We get ourselves to the field, so we have to drive down there, past the silos, and then we'll be ready to go. So obviously, just trying to be careful here. Alright, so we're gonna put the truck up against the field, and then it's going to be time to start figuring out how we go ahead and get some harvest going. We're running along here. We've got the truck coming down the road, so that will be ready to go. Hoping we've got everything ready to operate as necessary. Obviously, we're going to hit the unload point pretty quickly here. So we're going to see see what everything looks like. Alright, so the combine's made itself a little bit of room, and we're going to get our first unload done here. Problem is we're in a little tight quarters here, so hopefully everything can get out of the way later. Ooh, this is a multi-part vehicle. That sometimes makes things interesting. So I guess we'll have to see how all of this works. Truck should get out of the way. The combine should be able to resume operation shortly. So if you've not seen this type of work set up, this is a combination of Courseplay and AutoDrive handling this type of thing. But when you're doing large harvests like this, especially with multi-tools and so forth, and I've done this with multiple harvesters, multiple trucks. Most notably, you can see that on a couple things I tried on the Hastings map, so I'll put a link up here for that, for you to take a look at kind of a bigger network operating. We may decide to do that here on the Mega VIP series at some point, but right now I'm just trying to get going with what I've got, because I don't have the budget right now to blow the fleet up. So we've only got 467,000. So maybe after a few levels of VIP orders, after we're getting millions of dollars in here and there, we might be able to do things. And at this point, I'm not sure we need to do much other than multiple harvesters might be helpful, because this can take a little bit of time to get things going, as you might imagine. But you can see, you know, we kind of started a little bit further back from the truck, ended up close to the unload point, but we're already half full here with the barley, which is a good thing. It bodes well for being able to get the 162,000 liters the VIPs want at this first phase. And once we filled those orders, you know, my intent will be to save the barley in the event that I need it in the future. I can always choose to sell it later. Alright, so what we've got going on here, you can see the truck is on its way. So, and I haven't changed any of the defaults. So typically, once you're at 60%, and because again we're trying to avoid a bunch of craziness, I don't have it avoiding fruit, which is what the setting would be called. So it's just going to come through the field, but because we don't have crop destruction on. And the goal is that hopefully it doesn't always work well on headlands, because there's obstructions it's got to work with the trees. So that's why it's kind of hesitating. But it can come up to the combine and basically drive along with it, so that the combine can keep moving. And so, you know, the important thing is they're talking to each other, and, you know, it will do what it needs to there now. It's probably going to give itself some room. It's going to, you know, the way this is set up is it's going to keep kind of cutting an area out of the field so that the truck can pull up next to it. The challenge with multiple bay trucks is I've noticed that ends up being a problem, and you kind of have to do manual overrides. So what I may end up doing at some point is swapping out the trailer. So now this should get the truck. Yeah, it's gonna, and this is again where there's some of the inefficiencies. So it's gonna cycle through. Now it's gonna open the pipe. When the pipe's open again, there's gonna be a signal. So that's why the truck had covered itself. Now you can see it. The driver opened the cover. They're on the way, and they're gonna go ahead and fill. They just don't always go to the next bay, and so the challenge may end up being, actually, I'm impressed. So things may have been cleaned up a bit since last time I tested things, because what I was gonna say is I may need to change truck models. So you can also set what percentage the truck is full before it heads out. Now, alright, so it did do that. That's good. Now the problem is with the harvester turning on, sometimes that means it starts to move prematurely. I'm hoping that won't be the case, and unfortunately it is the case. But, alright. So this is where I'm going to need to manually intervene. So I'm going to jump into the truck. Because the situation we have is the harvester isn't fully unloaded, and so therefore the truck isn't getting the signal to clear. There was still 67 liters in there because the harvester started to move. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on, and you can see now it's waiting for the call. And so, you know, it'll shut itself off. But you can see here the unload fill level, 85%. And then here on the combine, this is the pre-call level that you can talk about. And we do have active unloading on to unload harvesters while driving, which is what it's trying to do. So what you end up doing over time is you kind of play with settings. And I'm going to go ahead and do that so that I change the call level to 40. Because on big fields like this where it's got to kind of play around, so now we should see the truck start moving. Here it comes. What will start happening is the truck doesn't have enough time to get there, so that's what happened with the 60%. So you kind of observe the behaviors and you make adjustments accordingly to then what you'd like to have happen, because obviously the goal would be to have this continue moving as efficiently as possible, and this works a lot better once the harvester is just kind of doing, oh, wow. It's going to leave a lot here, but I'm surprised because I think I do have smooth as the setting, but I wouldn't think it would have done that for the headlands. So what I may do at the end, and I do find myself doing that sometimes, is clean things up, because you know that's not a little bit of barley. I mean, it's not a ton, but it's enough that I would probably want to collect it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 500 liters. Now, on a farm this size, again, that's probably not much. So you can see, even with the 40%, because of the pathfinding, it's really struggling here to find a path, because kind of every time this harvester turns, everything's got to be recalculated for the truck to see if it can get here. And my guess is now we're going to run into the same position where we're going to hit the 95, so that's why it's folding up, because it kind of knows, like, yeah, he's not going to get here and unload me. I'm going to have to make some room and have him pull up. And then once again, we may have to do some of the valet that we need to do with this equipment, just as we did too with the tractors, to kind of get all of this to work. But what I like to do, and this is, you know, kind of what what I enjoy on the large series or the large maps when I do this kind of stuff is, you know, just kind of almost make it, it's almost farm management versus farm simulator in this case, where I'm just trying to get things done. You know, I'll certainly work things manually when I want to, but I also enjoy the challenge of trying to get things automated. So, I mean, off camera, what I had done is I had cleaned up the auto drive network all the way down to our cell point. So, like, once this is done, we should be able to have this truck just move along. Now, see, and again, this is my concern because switching bays, well, that's not really what we want at all, but we'll see, because then this may work. So, even though it's inefficient, usually I'll let this play out. Now, as long as the truck doesn't turn into the path, which it also sometimes does, what will happen is now, because the front and the middle bay are full, it'll call again. And yeah, the chickens are running. We don't need eggs. So I kind of let those go. I'm not artificially selling any eggs, but now we're going to have the same situation. And this is going to be a challenge here because the truck is next to us. And so sometimes it tries to find paths that it shouldn't. That's probably the easiest way to put it. And then they all start running into each other again. But it's, you know, this is going to continue to cut a spot. It stops doing that once it works on the next things. Now, again, the call doesn't happen until the pipe is out. So it has to go through that whole cycle, and then the call is made to the truck, and then the truck is going to try to figure out how best to get there. And what I normally have seen is some really ugly S-curves where it's now going to like turn right into the front of the harvester, but this may actually path find nicely. We'll see. No, it's kind of doing what I was worried about. But as long as it doesn't hit the harvester, I guess we're okay. But yeah, this is the challenge. Wow. Either we got lucky or it got a little bit better at figuring out where it was. So it should fill the back bay here. The question is the angle right? Because sometimes you have that challenge where, okay, it's considering it in the right place, so it's filling. You can see the grain going up, so sometimes it's a little forgiving with the triggers, which is great. Now, why it chose to stop there, I don't know. But as long as it clears, we'll be okay. I think it's hitting. Alright. So I probably, again, may need to intervene. You can see it's turning the wheels. It's trying to find a way. But, obviously it's having a hard time. So it's... yeah, the harvester may just shake itself free. Or not. Alright, so before I have a mess here, I am just gonna let this do its thing. Now, what it may be doing is the truck may have stopped because it hit the 85% fill point. Normally, it wouldn't do that. This should pick up here. And so yeah, you're kind of seeing under the hood a little bit more than, you know, I try to keep it a little bit more immersive, but at this point I think it's good to show what's done to kind of put something like this together if you're trying to work. But the way that truck is headed, it is definitely on its way to deliver. Now, the problem's going to be as quick as this fills up, besides from the fact that it didn't fill. So if this behavior continues, what I'll typically do is I'll raise that threshold, because while it's pouring grain, I've never seen it pull away. So I would have expected it to get past that 85%, but instead it looks like it literally stopped filling at the 85%. But that left 10,000 in the harvester, which means this is really going to get kind of nowhere. And, you know, it's going to cut the swath, and then it's going to be waiting for this truck. Alright. So the truck goes back. Oh, I see. It hit its max point. So we can't even get to 85%. So it is considering itself full. Now, you can see on the auto drive GUI over here, I'll kind of, again, move out so I can point. It's driving to the unload point. Auto drive gives you time. So it's going to take nearly 11 minutes to get there. Again, this is a big map. Good news is it's going, which means it has found a path, which means the auto drive edits I did seem to be accurate. And then what you do at an unload point is you set the named coordinates on your auto drive network. So what I have called Hillside Ranch, it has to be past the unload points. So this is again where this could potentially have a problem, but I'm hoping since the loading worked cleanly that we won't. But it may have difficulty unloading multiple bays. Now, I do slow down the cornering speed by default. Auto drive leaves it at 100%. I've found things getting really, really big trouble there. Okay. And you gotta make your curves large enough that those type of things can clear. That was close, but it worked. So because we haven't gone through this area of the map, we'll follow the truck along. I may just let it go the whole way, just so you can kind of see now that we have the sun coming up, because when I did this auto drive network it was pretty dark. You know, and depending on how you want things to operate with your auto drive system and so forth, like you can adjust when the blinkers come on, you can adjust if the beacons are used. I don't have the beacons on because sometimes they come on all the time and it almost looks worse than just not having them. But you know, when the turn signals come on is set by what the angle of a turn is. So you'll see when it goes around certain turns, it might end up putting a blinker on. Now, the other thing that auto drive does is you can, when you load a map, tell it, hey, you know, use what's on the map for traffic. So you can see, because this is a sharp turn, my right turn signal is turning on, even though this is just on the road. There's no setting that I've seen that lets you avoid that type of thing, where it's intelligent enough to realize, all right, this really isn't an intersection that I need to not signal for, it's just the road turning. So it kind of breaks out of reality there, where normally a driver probably wouldn't be putting his signal on there. We're going to hit that at the other end of the field here. You know, but basically our field is over that group of trees, and then field 8 sits over there. So if we look at the map, you can see that's the group of trees we're looking at, you know, and our harvester is now waiting to be unloaded, which is why it's blinking. And so again, our left turn signal is on. It's being a little careful because it can sense there's obstructions. But the way the road network works, so this is sometimes what you have to make decisions on. Because this map is so large, I just chose to make individual one-way paths. But what it gave me was a one-direction, one-way path. I would have expected that this would have been a bi-directional down the center of the road, but it's not. And so, rather than recreate it, and go through the time of deleting it or changing it to double, which if there is a way to massively do it, I'm not familiar with it. So I think you have to go through and basically click every point, and that is incredibly time consuming on a map this size. You can also see it's gotten bright enough that now our lights aren't on by default, so it's turned off the headlights and the tail lights. And as you can see, it needs to turn left. Now on this road, it does have two directions. And this is where it gets interesting, where there's traffic. Because a lot of times the traffic doesn't behave well. Like, see, it'll stop, but it'll stop in a way that I think we're going to get hung up on this. Of course. Alright. So what I need to do at that point is override. Oh boy. So it got far enough here. So I'm turning on the differentials, which is, I think, why I got the wonderful skid marks. And then, you know, you kind of clear this up, and then you can readjust, and it now knows it has enough crop. It continues on. So the nice thing is it's somewhat forgiving when you have to do things like that. And you can see we've still got a ways to go, but this double highway here, the road network was set up properly where it's unidirectional on the proper sides. So I was able to basically splice my network into this in the directions that I needed to. So in that case, the line we took from the field was already provided in the automation. So I really didn't have to do anything other than drive along, make the connections here, because they don't always connect at intersections when it auto-creates properly. And so we go for a little while. You can see the town on the right side coming into distance, or in the distance coming into view is what I meant. There is a really winding road that goes that way. There is some auto drive network stuff in there. Maybe one of those days we'll decide to take a trip that way, but that just seemed very, very inefficient. It would be straighter, but I think it would take just as long or longer because of the speeds it would have to do and the pathfinding it does to get through stuff like that. So I chose the more straight route. So yeah, we've got the really giant church, which probably really isn't a good native indicator of what you'd see in Nebraska. This is almost like a European, it's even almost overstated for a European cathedral with the crazy spire, but that's what they've put in here. It's impressive looking, but as you can see, we're in Hay Springs, Nebraska, and then yeah, we're going to turn left here, and then that takes us over to Ashley Farms. So you can see we're a minute and a half away, and in the time space we're running here, it's taken us an hour to get here, which obviously seems excessive, but you know, this is what I've got to figure out, and what I may end up doing, just to let this not be crazy, is I may end up taking the time scale down and letting this run just so these fields can get harvested. So I may find that I need to do that, because otherwise this could turn into, it's going to take me 5 months to just harvest this one field, and then that kind of takes everything else off. But in the end, it's not as if we're using crop calendars either, so if it does take that long, that's okay too. So we are now coming up to Hillside Ranch, as you can see on the map, and the silos at the far end. So again, this path was existing and was created by AutoDrive automatically when I accepted the traffic routes, but then basically the return trip all the way back and connecting in and getting into the silo and all that, this was all hand edited by me to do what I need to do. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on the network points so you can see how this is set up. So green lines are one way, blue lines are bi-directional, but you can see the tag point for Hillside Ranch is way past the unload point here. And you need to do that so that as things go over, it'll just auto unload. You can now see on our VIP order that we are delivering to the right location, which is obviously important. So we get a little bit of money for that. We'll get a little bit more here. You know, and we're going to get whatever it was, 37,000 or something liters. And so yeah, the back is over, so it was able to just open the doors without moving any further. And then, oh, okay, I guess I'm wrong. There's just a lot more in there than I thought. It looked like the pouring had changed, but there we go. So we've got, you know, whatever little bit, $10,000 or so, I think, because we were in the 465, 467, so it might be like 8,000. But we've got the limit, and now we've got another 11 minutes to get back. So I'm not going to include that. That will go ahead and run. And like I said, I'll probably we'll see how this goes, but I will hop back in once we're back at the field, and we'll kind of continue there, but I may adjust the time scale depending how things go. Alright, so you can see the truck's gotten back. It has unloaded the combine. And we'll jump back in with the combine operator, and he is on his way, and we're getting to the point. No, probably not before we're full one more time. But that other edge of the field is a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and set this even lower to 20%. So at this point, he's going to start moving right away. Sometimes I literally go all the way down to 0, just so that it has a shot at working. But what I was starting to share last time was, once these are in straight paths, this track and unload and drive with it works better. I think the way Courseplay created it, it's going across the field here, so there isn't anything incredibly long. You know, we can see the truck in the back. It's slowly catching us, but as we make more turns, it's going to have some more challenges. And because this is hanging off the edge of the field, I think all the truck is going to do is follow the combine at this point. So that's the other little bit of the flaw here. So there's a thing I can change. So restrict Pathfinder to the field is one of those. Now, at this point, it could go ahead and say, alright, I'm going to find a path where I need to go that's not on the field. It doesn't appear to have changed the behavior at all. Let's see if I change restrict. Okay. So I changed restrict unloader to the field, but we're probably at the 95%. My guess is what it's doing and why it's backing off. Yep. So the combine is going to do its little cut. You can see up there, that's where we need to get to before we have the first headland again. So, again, we're perhaps going to be dealing with some of the dancing around that is going to be a little less effective. We're now waiting for the combine to stop. It's going to fold up again, then it's going to put out its pipe. So you can see the truck's covered. It's kind of going through that cycle where now it's not in the follow me and unload while I drive. Now it has gone into the next cycle, which is just, alright, you're not ready. So now you can see it's driving to the combine pipe. Hopefully it will load the first one fully. Last time it did this, it just went to the second slot and then it couldn't open up. So, alright. So maybe this will work a little bit better, or maybe it'll be worse. So, like, you know, my concern is with the combine revving up, that usually means it's going to start moving prematurely, and hoping, because this should hopefully have enough space to fill in that bin and get this combine empty. Well, maybe not. question is it going to do it fast enough that it can then get clear? And of course not. Because once again, if the combine is not empty, the truck won't clear because it doesn't have the signal. So I'm going to manually override. So this is where sometimes it's, you know, the automation does what the automation does. We'll turn this back on because it's going to wait for the call. It's going to get to 20% pretty quickly, I'm sure. We'll stick with the truck this time just so we can see what the behavior is. But this is a little bit of the gamesmanship you're doing with this, is trying to figure out what works. I would contend this is still faster than if I was trying to do everything manually, because at a minimum, like, the combine was able to go a little further down the field while the truck was driving, so forth. And same thing, like now the truck is moving, you know, if I'm operating the combine, the truck is waiting, and then I've got to bring it from further away. So at a minimum, you know, and you can see what AutoDrive says it's doing is it's catching up with the combine. Because I'm not restricting it to the field, it did that, but now see it's planning a path again because the combine's turning, and so therefore it's like, well, now, you know, I got to figure out where it's going now because it's doing something different. And then it does catch ups around curves slowly. And once again, it's now trying to figure out what to do. And because there's always little course adjustments with the combine, like that gets transmitted, and I think that's what causes some of the delay. Now, I think because I didn't restrict the unloader to the field, well, no, now it's going into the rear again. So, because initially I'm like, well, maybe it'll work, but it doesn't look like it's going to. So you can see initially, obviously, I had not turned off the straw swaths, so we've got a little bit of that on the field. I ended up correcting that pretty quickly. But I've got two headlands going, so we're going to kind of continue this issue all the way around, and then eventually it should clear up. And of course, sometimes this happens where it's trying to get to the pipe to do what it should be doing, and because the harvester is maneuvering, it's not working. So we may get a little bit. This might actually work. I was thinking I'm going to have to wait until later. You know, so the nice thing is if it can do this, like, then things can move. Now, again, they're in each other's way here. So the truck slightly moves, the harvester slightly moves. And you can see, like, again, this is not a perfect science. So, and then when things kind of fall apart, you go back and you do its thing, and then it'll figure it out. You know, the nice thing is obviously it probably unloaded 1,000 or 2 from the harvester. I can't imagine it's below 20%, but it's interesting that it folded up the pipe. Oh, I see, it's exiting the field because I'm sure it hit the full size, or it's I'm in the truck already. I was jumping around to see. So it has to get to the unload point before it's considered exiting the field. So it's positioning itself that way, and then it'll hit where the unload point is, and now you can see now it's switched to driving to unload point. So in 11 minutes it'll be there. So let me just jump over here again. You can see we're already at 84, so we're not going to get very far before the harvester's just going to stop and ultimately be waiting to be unloaded again. Now the difference is because it's on the second headland, when it does that, it's just going to put its pipe out. It's not going to cut itself a space anymore because it won't need to do that. So we'll get through to that point here. And, you know, now this is going to wait the 22 minutes for the truck to come all the way around. And you can see it's not even gotten to the intersection yet. It just vanished just because of the rendering distance. But so it's going around the corner there. So it's going to take a little bit of time I've gone ahead and just kind of set the time to real time. You know, as I get closer, I mean, this will be the whole day. Like, there will be nothing else done in October, so even if this only takes 5 or 6 hours for this to run through, I'm not going to be like, ooh, I've got, you know, extra time in the afternoon to do things, because I could, you know, I'm sure the grass is ready to be mowed again since we've skipped 2 months and so forth, but I don't have those needs. But what I do have is, yes, I have enough hay to fill the 360,000 I need for the next order. So I can deactivate this, and then the next need we're going to have for those type of products is going to be the 609,000 in grass. So there's going to be a couple grass harvests that need to happen as well. Obviously, a new map. We always have the issue of trying to find things, but you know, more so here. So you can see the hay and the grass are going to fermenting silo small. So those tend to be sell points on the map, so I go to the sell point area and I try to figure out where things are. The problem is there's 2 things with that name on the map. One is here on Ashley Farms, and one is over here on Fair Oaks. So there's a fermenting silo small and a fermenting silo small. You can see the truck is finally here. It's still on its way. The other thing you can do, aside from continuing to adjust the auto drive network, is I've just decided to turn traffic off. Then the truck isn't going to get hung up on cars, because it's doing that on the main highway, and then it's just more manual intervention that I need to do that I don't need to worry about. But what that means now that I have 2 fermenting silos is I'm going to have to do a trial and error where I'm going to have to take some grass. You know, I'll probably start with this one since it's closer, and or hay, you know, one of those orders that I'm trying to fill, and just dump a little bit in and see, am I getting credit? If I'm not, then I know it's the other one. The challenge you've got, because here I can see there's 2 larges, there's 2 smalls. Diesel isn't going to come up as something we're going to have to fulfill for the VIPs, but this is like the biggest nightmare. If you've got a map where you have selling stations that are like this, you then potentially have a real problem where it's creating things. So there's definitely maps I've used where there's just a farm silo, for example, and that's what it's called, but there's 7 or 8 farms on the map, and the VIP orders are telling you you need to fill it at the farm silo. You just don't know which one. So it's kind of hazards of the mod, I suppose, and how things work. You know, you could go in, make changes somehow. I don't know if it requires a map edit or how that all works. I'm less familiar with that aspect, frankly, so that all your sell points are uniquely named, for example, and then that would alleviate that. But you know, we'll see how that goes, because right now, you know, in the first 3 levels, those are the only things we're going to have an issue with, you know. And once again, because I figure out what it is for the hay, that doesn't mean that it's the same fermenting silo for the grass. So I'm going to have to, in essence, try to figure that out each time. But then I think the rest of these are straightforward, because the hillside grain dryer is where we're going now with the barley, so that's where our corn is going to go. And so it's getting close to that road that it's going to take and move on up. So I do like the fact sometimes here, because it looks like literally this is showing the fact that the field got partially planted one day and then they finished it the next day. So it's in 2 stages of growth, similar to what we had. The nice thing is, on these headlands, it looks like I just have this and this as areas to touch up if I need to, and so I can make that decision once I see how we're doing on the orders, because once again, once I fill this, we'll be good. But at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this continue on, and the next thing I'm going to go ahead and share is either properly running unloading once this is going down straight tracks, so it's going to have to finish this headland, or switching the truck to start accumulating barley at our farm silo. Because since the driver for this series is the VIP orders, what I don't want to do is keep selling off crops and then suddenly need barley and have to go through a whole barley harvest where perhaps what I have remaining here could serve 2 or 3 future VIP orders. So as long as I have the space, I can do that, and then I'll worry about selling if I suddenly am over capacity in my silo. So I'm going to go, that's kind of the plan at this point, and so I'll see you in a bit. So I hopped in pretty quickly because this is actually working better than I thought. This is still the second headland. It's actually the first pass back. So I looked at my other options that I have available on the farm. I have this Crampy trailer that has a higher capacity, so if nothing else, I'm hoping that I can run a little bit more up there. I need 69,000 liters, I think, so either way, 2 more trips, and I've already filled the VIP order. But if I can get, say 40,000, but this is actually working well in following along with the combine. So as you can see, it's set, and it's catching side on the left, as it says, and it's run into a few little issues here and there, but when it first pulled up, it started to do that sharp turn where it got hung up last time, but this time it worked, so I figured I'd share that victory with you, and also the fact that I've gone ahead and changed to another trailer. Alright, so you can see here we did hit a max, but it is 40,291. So the nice thing with that is it's going to give us a little bit of a different result. It's an interesting field exit strategy, but it could be because it determines this is a little bit more direct than the other route. But it's going to run that down, and then what I will do is I will adjust the fill limit on this trailer. Then it's going to perhaps block the harvester because they're both slowing down for each other, so they're almost creating their own problem here. But should be okay. Hopefully it'll clear up. But yeah, what I'll do is adjust the fill limiter because I don't want to give any extra barley to the location than I need to. And that way I can fill what I need, maybe give it a liter or 2 to spare, because sometimes there's those little type of quirks with the VIP orders and so forth. Because the last thing I want is to have to make another 22-minute loop because I need 5 more liters of barley. So it's kind of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then now that I've showed the synchronized unloading, I don't need to do that, but what I will do is then hop back in when the final load is getting ready to be delivered, and then obviously we'll switch over and show the delivery to our farm silo, and then I'll determine what it makes sense to delve into after that, other than simply the wrap-up of the harvest at the end to kind of understand what we got off these fields. But I'll see you in a bit. Got my final load coming in here, so this should conclude the VIP order for the barley. I think we've got probably almost 2,000 extra. So I need to back that up. There we go, 0. So we've got the harvest income. You can see it went green. Alright, so at this point I'm heading back to the farm, and back here the combine, as you might expect, is full and waiting for the truck to return. So at this point I am going to just continue with the harvest. Next thing I'm going to go ahead and show is now we're going to change to the farm silo as the drop-off point now that we have completed the order. Alright, the truck's finally arrived back at the field. The hope is that the rest of the harvest will go quicker and that it won't really take that long throughout the day to get done, because the truck only going to the farm here locally should be a quicker round trip, and as opposed to taking over 15 minutes to make one trip, I'm hoping it can do it in a couple minutes, and that would mean that the harvester really isn't stopping. So we'll see him unload here. He should begin moving shortly. It always takes that little bit of a step, but then won't move otherwise. Because the other pieces, if we can get it to unload while it is harvesting, that's going to be a better result. Again, with efficiency and speed. Because, all we're doing is going over that tree line there to that silo complex, and then that should allow us to get through pretty quickly. So hopping back over here again, at 20%, we're going to get the call to run the truck over. So we're going to start seeing that happen pretty quickly. The issue is we're getting close to the end of the row, so by the time he catches up, it's probably going to mean that it's going to be time to turn around, and we're going to be playing that same game that we have been before. But you can see on the mini-map we do have a little ways to go, and all it really needs to do is unload, say, 4,000 liters, which can happen pretty quickly, but we're really close to the edge here. But we are getting some decrease. So at this point, it's going to back off and give the combine room. But we got it down. The question is, does it continue to follow, or does now it wait for 20%? Because this field just isn't conducive to really long runs. But it's going to hit 20% pretty quickly, but the other challenge now we have is going in this direction. It's not going to pull into the field to unload, so all it will do is follow behind. So you can see here at the tail end of the field, the truck's just been following. And the hope is at this point that the truck will come around and we'll get to the harvester before it hits 100%, and preferably empty it out before it gets to the end of the row. Now, it's really taking some time to get going here. It's going to be really close. 90, 91. Not quite sure why it stopped and backed up. Probably because it's hitting the I'm full marker. Okay, so the truck is pulled up. To try to change it, I've gone ahead and adjusted the auto drive, or the course play interplay on the combine to call at 0%, so that basically it's going to call immediately. Now, we're running the risk of at some point the truck's going to fill up as well, and then we're going to have to see if we can get to the farm silo appropriately. Okay, so it starts chasing the combine relatively quickly. It took a bit of time, so given where it was on the field, it was close. Now, once again, we're going to run the risk here. I think 40,000 is the limit. So it's not going to fill it, but the big question is, can the combine make it all the way to the other end of the field without being full? You can see it's rotated around. It's now lowering its header, and now it's cutting in. The truck shut itself off, because at this point, all it's going to be able to do is follow behind, but it's waiting for the turn. So the benefit of following behind is that it's at least nearer the other end and can catch up to the combine much faster. So the other thing I've done that I don't know if it really helps, but it's supposed to, is I put in an RTK on the map, which is a signaling station for use with precision farming that is supposed to make the workers go 11% faster when you're using an AI worker. So I'm hoping that is also going to improve things. I certainly want to take advantage of it on a map of this size. There's a little bit of showing how this will all work. We know the truck's going to fill up here this time. See how it comes around. Again, it's probably going to hesitate, but hopefully it will catch it before it slows down like it did before because it hit the 95. Now I'm going to pull up my auto drive because you can see I've got farm main silo as the unload point, but I'm not sure I have a clear path. So the first thing that's now going to happen, now that we've hit our max of 40,291, is the truck is going to exit the field. So it's going to go to that unload point, the field 8 unload, which is why it's highlighted in blue. And at that point, it's going to calculate the time. Now, we shouldn't have anything over a couple minutes, I would think, at most. Alright, so 1 minute and 39 seconds, that seems reasonable. Because what I was concerned about is that the only path I would have would require it to basically circle the entire loop, go out to Hillside Ranch that we'd been delivering to, and then come back. But I think I created a path that works, because 1 minute and 39 sure seems more reasonable. After all, these are still large distances out here in Nebraska. Some of the time is just the care that AutoDrive does take around turns and avoiding obstacles and so forth, so that will add some time. But once a truck gets going, I did notice it was really decreasing the arrival time by like 2 seconds for every second. I don't think the truck's going to get that fast here. So it should go to the next entrance. If it doesn't, okay, I was going to say if it doesn't, it's not going to work because the main silo unload point is beyond that. Now this is taking a while, and it's just because it's trying to figure out whatever path I've drawn. So this is always a bit of the challenge with automating your work, is you could certainly do this faster. Now this should just pull over and unload. Let's hope that's what we see. So there we go. So we're dumping barley into our farm silo. And once that's done, it should then immediately take off out of this driveway and head back. I don't think it's still going to get back before the harvester is full, which is disappointing. It might work better on field 9, so we'll see how that works next time when we're harvesting the canola. So as you might expect, very similar time, about 1.5 minutes or so. It's a little bit less because it doesn't have to circle around. It's already on this side, and once again, I don't know that it's going to speed up enough to see that time. But yeah, you can see now it's every second it's going down about 2 seconds, but then we're immediately slowing down here. So at this point, we know our loop works, and the harvester's already waiting on the field, so it has finished in that time. It's backed out. Now manually, certainly would likely be driving this path faster. So there is that trade-off, but that's the benefit you get with some of the automation. Now the hope is, again, we don't want to see the harvester start up and start moving too early. So, we know there's, I think, 18,000 or so in the harvester. Good news is the header hasn't started spinning yet. I just want to observe this before I stop and let the work get going on its own, and then we'll step away from recording. There you go, we are empty. It is now clear, so when it takes off, it's going to have a clear path back into the field, and now the truck will be able to do a little bit of mirroring for the 2 or 3 loads before it's going to be full again. So at least now you get an idea of how the work is going to proceed on the farm. So this is going to keep moving along here, and we're going to get this field harvested. And again, the hope is, because now all of that happened within half an hour, versus we're spending 20 minutes with just waiting for the truck to drive and the harvester isn't moving. So the harvester probably stopped for a few minutes, which isn't terrible, but this should hopefully go quicker, and my hope is that then it will allow the field to get done before the end of the day. So at this point, I am going to step away, let this work continue, and once we're finished, I'll hop back in so you can see where things are. So as you can see, the field is harvested. So it took 3 or 4 hours, which again is why I just kind of let it do its thing. I thought I had an issue. I will show you that once I get to the silo. So I will pull in here, and we will dump these 37,000 liters of barley in the pit. So the challenge and the panic was this. After about an hour of running on its own into the farm silo, I'm like, oh goodness, something is happening. But what I determined is when you go in, you can get it out. It's just there's something wrong with the silo that doesn't let you see it. So it is a grain dryer. It's made for the dry corn, and I think that's basically part of the challenge, is that it's got something messed up for that. But I was getting ready to basically put in another silo and just get that in there outside of the standard flow of the game to basically compensate for what seemed like something that was broken. And it is broken, but it's not broken enough. So, as we talked about, like, you can't get rid of certain things, and I certainly want the grain dryer. Like, if they want to ask me for dried corn as a VIP order at some point, I'm fine doing that. So I don't want to eliminate what's there, but just like those 3 silos out there that in theory are ours, but don't seem to do anything, or I can't get them to work even with augers. This one concerned me, and I had gone back to a save and was getting ready to place it, and then decided to check, since the save I had still had some things moved into the farm silo, and I was able to determine that in fact we can get something. So as we saw, aside from the whatever it was, 160,000, I think. Yes, it does. 162,000. So then we had 414, so we had over 500, approaching 600,000 liters of barley on that field. So as figured, pretty substantial. So at this point, that's the work for today. So I'm going to wrap this episode up, and I'll see you next time.